yeah, it's kind of...
Okay, we are all set. We're on Facebook and we're recording.
Thank you, John. Are you going to mute everybody and then unmute, or?
Yes, that's what I'm going to do.
So, hi everybody. Thanks so much for coming to my birthday party on Lit Balm. It's wonderful to see all of you. We have an amazing group of people reading with us here tonight, alongside Jeffrey Cyphers-Wright, Cassandra Atherton, and Jonathan Penton, my co-hosts of this fantastic series that we have now been running for 4.5 years. We are delighted to feature Giorgia Pavlidou, Olivia Wu, Sharon Mesmer, Paul Hetherington from Australia, Dominique Vincenz, my sister, Robert Archambeau, Lorette C, Luzajic from Toronto, Dominique Hecq, who's coming into us from Melbourne, Kevin Gallagher, Lydia Cortés, Andrew Joron from San Francisco, Daniel Tobin, Kim Chinquee, and of course, John Wessick. Thank you so much for joining us. And so I'm gonna just introduce Jeffrey quickly. Jeff received his MFA after studying with Allen Ginsberg. He's often known as a new romantic poet. He's also a publisher, critic, eco-activist, impresario, filmmaker, puppeteer, and artist. He's the author of 19 books of poetry, including Blue Lyre and Party Everywhere. His poems have appeared in the Cafe Review, New American Writing, the Brooklyn Rail, the Hurricane Review, Posit, and more recent works also appear in the anthologies Best American Poetry, New York Insiders, and Contemporary Surrealist and Magical Realist Poetry. His latest work, a book of sonnets and artwork called Doppelgangster, came out from Mad Hat Press fairly recently. And Jeff won the Sir Vision James Tate Prize. He publishes Live Mag. And let's have a look at Jeff's poem film.
Let me try to get this working here. Hold on.
Can we turn up the sound, John?
It's about the best we can do.
Looks like we have no sound at all now.
So you can't hear anything at all?
No. Let's move on. Let's move on.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, folks, it was an attempt. We'll try and get back to that later. Next, we hear from Cassandra Atherton, who is my co-host and an award-winning prose poet, an international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books and is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra Crowe wrote prose poetry, an introduction, and co-edited the anthology of Australian prose poetry. She's also commissioning editor for Westerly magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. Cassandra.
Thank you, Mark. Happy birthday. You know, you have to make a wish. Birthday wishes always come true. So I was talking to Mark before and he doesn't have cake. So he's going to stick his candle in something later on, I believe. So I'm going to read one of Mark's poems from No More Animal Poems. I was delighted to write an introduction to that book. There were so many I could have chosen from, but I decided to go with something that I know is near and dear to Mark's heart, which is Quantum Entanglement, a Cosmic Rift. The space between you and them doesn't exist. They may be the mirror of each other, or they may be not what we think. Perhaps they are made of a spooky action at a distance, or maybe cause and effect occur at the same time. Surely space and time are the same, says our world turtle. Do we need the entire breadth of the universe, asks a solitary snail. The universe doesn't exist, says the crow, plucking at the entrails of half a shaggy monkey. Isn't the last state always an exciting instant? Asks the sunflower. The air is suddenly thick with clouds, and the eel says, isn't the universe just atoms and particles? It troubles us all, says the crow soulfully, staring at his talons. Deep inside matter, we're all fuzzy and undefined, he reminds. A wave of probability descends like a rain cloud. So once again, happy birthday. I will, when we actually get to a decent hour in Australia that I can drink, I will toast to your birthday, but I think 7 o'clock in the morning's maybe a little early. I don't know. We may crack the champagne later on. I would like to introduce, and I know you've missed him, it's the incredible Jonathan Penton. He founded the electronic journal Unlikely Stories in 1998, and he continues to run it as editor-in-chief. He has served in editorial, management, and technical roles for numerous arts organizations. He now serves as technical director for the New Orleans Poetry Festival. His own books of poems are backstories with Argotist ebooks, Standards of Sedity with Lit Press, Painting Rust and Blood and Salsa with Unlikely Books, and Last Chap with Virgin Press. He lives in New Orleans. Jonathan, we're so excited to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. Let's see. I will read one of Marc's poems. My printer died, so I'm reading off the screen. So excuse me as I look through it through the bottom of my glasses like a lunatic. This is from the forthcoming Spells for the Wicked, which will be publishing the first half of next year, and we've got a big release planned in New York for June of next year. Cosmic Alignment. We wander from star to star, looking for planets in Goldilocks zones, for meltwater and radio signals, methane and carbon dioxide, fragments of life short 1 trillion miles away, rushing into existence urgently, leaving evidence on petrified rock, on gold or diadems, on obelisks and menhirs, standing stones, anything that might pass eternal scrutiny. But then, to transplant that find and scatter that seed upon another unexpected cluster of Earth cells who will go about making their own private business, yet without the misconduct to cultivate land and sea and sky, without the epithets to grace temples. And just as one might enter an oyster, that's slipping into the gullet, followed by an instant of delight, suggesting the saline rush of oceans, the mouthwash of moon tides, and once again the rush of planets meeting their end time in the crush of a quasar, or the ramifications of a tongue upon the devilish surfaces of hot asphalt, within the particulates of anoxic fumes. Know this, the bull of heaven will return to fight the same battle over and over, until in the end, finally, the hero always wins. All right. Thank you, Marc, for writing that. And it is my turn to read his bio. Marc Vincenz is an Anglo-Swiss-American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published over 40 books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently The Pearl Diver of Uranmani, The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars, and the Mayfly Codex. Forthcoming poetry collections are Spells for the Wicked by Unlikely Books, Ironclad by Spite and Dival, and No More Animal Poems by White Pine Press. Marc is also a prolific translator and has translated from the German, Romanian, and French. He has published 11 books of translations, most recently Inaudible Blue, Selected Poems 1963-2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Mertz, which won the 2023 Massachusetts Book Prize for Translated Literature. His own work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Spanish, Romanian, Greek, German, and Icelandic. He is currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. He's the editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He has lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but now lives on a farm in rural western Massachusetts overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, which was Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are still more black bladder boiled meloid beetles, cocklebur weevils, and six-spotted neoleme than bipedal hominoids. Marc, what will you be presenting us with today?
Thanks. Yeah, I actually, the tongue twister was intended for Cassandra because she likes to have those tongue twisters, but I'm sorry that you had to face that.
It was fun.
So yeah, when of course, actually I'm running out of insects. We only have 330,000 left of them to catalog. Actually, there are 330,000 species of known insects in the United States, but in Massachusetts, there's something like 35,000, something like that. So I still have a while. I just hate to repeat the word beetle or weevil too much, but anyway, here we go. I'm going to read a couple of poems from No More Animal Poems. And in fact, tonight you're going to hear the three Daddies poems, which were inspired by Sylvia Plath, of course, on some level. And these are interspersed in the book No More Animal Poems, which addresses climate change, extinction, industrial, pollution, and so on. So this is called Daddy's Shrunken Heads. And by the way, it's a true story. Daddy's shrunken heads lay there right next to his pipe rack and reminded me of those plastic trolls whose hair you could braid like a Viking's. They all had these grimaces, clenched eyes, as if they lost their heads in the last act of pleasure or pain. Hard to tell. The lines get blurry there. Later, Mummy hid them, those telling three heads that stared at the world from inside a coconut. Daddy advised me they were three of his ex-business partners. One from Russia, one Brazil, the third, a little fella who grew up on the wrong side of the tracks somewhere in Islington in North London. I would stare longingly into their distant pasts. I knew the Russian hailed from Stalingrad and had once been a window cleaner, and the Brazilian was half Swedish, and prior to being a business fellow had dabbled in the arcane arts, a lover of the Ouija and the tarot card, it was said. The Englishman was a man of letters. By the shape of his nose, I could tell he had been a fine poet. In fact, the last four lines from his very last poem popped into my head from time to time. They went like this. Stop the presses, roll out the stresses, let me be the squirrel to your acorn. The inflamed enjambment of caresses, the knees to your bees in a hailstorm. Strangely, between those early days and those of the three heads' demise, the Englishman had become a disreputable chap dealing in exotic insects. The Russian fellow ended up at the ends of the earth on an ocean freighter destined for the turquoise shallows of Borneo, and the Brazilian had been hijacked mid-sea. It was hardly a Titanic moment, more a strafe of irony. They all landed on what they thought was a deserted beach. And lucky for me, they smelled of cinnamon and vanilla, of toasted garlic and onions, hand-rolled Havanas, and Mummy's chicken salad. That was until Mummy tossed them into the trash chute, along with Daddy's collection of pornography and the purple evil eye that I seem to recall came from the island of Crete. But then again, I may be wrong. And I'm gonna, since it's my birthday, I'm gonna read a couple more. Normally I don't do that, I just let the features get on, but sorry, Giorgia, I hope you're okay over there. Okay, all right, I'm gonna read one or two more little jaunts here. I'll find the right piece, here we go. Oh, yes. I had 5 poems published in the Fortnightly Review recently. And in fact, it's been about a couple of days. So I'm going to read these. And then we'll move on to the feature. Holy Ghosts. Before the mercury arouses their guiles, before arriving on the softest flurry of air, before they've seen what we've been through, they might say, in all their fading traces, across the meadows, through Luna's secret garden, over the apples ripening in the grass, passing the demented bloodhound who feeds upon a shriveled sparrow behind the fence, or seaward, across foam and tide and floating seafowl, where the wide-eyed turtle of the Mediterranean swims in her own oils and blood and sings, "Reduce the choice to one," and then, "Why rise when asleep and wander the lime body?" How much would we yield on a sunny day? And what of the milestones you follow home, child? Their own Holy Ghost, a simpler soul might say, whatever forms a brain may one day be discovered on a field in Hungary or Brittany, beside sword and shield in royal blue, or when you are quite aware of the shades you've drawn, when your eyesight lessens, know the human body flows, all that intolerable rendering an exercise of purposefulness, the willingness to stride red-hot coals, or to ride wide-eyed and wild into the storm. So a bit of a tongue twister on that one. Next one's a little sampler. A crow delivers salient points. And by the way, there have been crows cruising around our backyard like crazy recently, squawking and going like mad. I don't know what's around, but there's obviously something that's enthusing them. Anyway, a crow delivers salient points. It becomes easier to search for worms when you're at ease with the breeze. Bones with traces of marrow are to be found everywhere. Follow the sound of the largest beak. They will know how to peck and sing. Tear flesh as close to the sinew as your reach may allow. Follow the wolves Follow the lions. Use your shadow to create panic. Then perch and wait. Don't show off your plumage unless you're absolutely sure yours is brightest. Allow the magpie and the jackdaw their little misgivings. Give off no known odor by rubbing yourself in a cocktail of slime and mud. Learn to observe everything from far, far above. Comment only when called upon. Comment sporadically, or just nod your head. Here's another one for the far too early demised poet, translator, Mark Spitzer. A very obscure diagnosis. On an uneven Sunday, the demons appear at the courthouse. They're demonstrating a movie, something like that. I've been told it involves a black cat. They wave their magic antlers to the tune of God Save Our Souls. And it has us truly befuddled. Apparently, the lead actor, they're called Wednesday or Friday, either way, an uneven day of the week, appears at the opening as a 12-pointed demon known to frequent alleys with a cat named Heliotrope. Who doesn't have demons in their basement, Pa Rat says innocently, staring at the gelatin dribbling down the panes. Is that all you see out the window? His wife says, pouring the eternal milky tea. Into a desert. A good pagan god lives within us, she said. She, like her counterpart, smelling of salts and spices, following a horizontal wind that stiffens the eyes. Would one night's sleep so soon be over? All those visitations in the dark. Oh, friends, do you see her dappling the shore? She's laid watch over you for centuries. Swirl that glass of wine. Pull your thoughts from the olive plate. For those of you who toe the hard line, watch the sleepy-eyed child air out your lighthouses. Only this ominous, whispering, three-eyed creation who sails the air with you might encourage your instinct to speak its mind. Or are you just water living in a clock? There are words only minnows know, and in the early morning at 4:45, when the palm frogs bellow, they see eternity's immobile double doors. A good God behaves, of course. Time follows. And I'll read another one at the very end of everything. But this is my last one before I listen to all my great friends. And it is a favorite of Brian Swan's. 3 moths and a nymph in a bucket of fiery piss. In ancient Rome, buckets of piss frost and sloshed on every corner. And those wry mystics passing and imbibing that sulfuric aroma touched the muddy hemlines of perpetually leaking gods, who too had pissed down cobblestone lane into the latrine and along the laundry line. And bear in mind, back then, there were no laundromats or dry cleaners. Garments were plunged into the fiery piss, collected at crossroads, turned and spun and whirled with giant wooden ladles until they had been enamored with the human genome and decided to spill their guts down the Antediluvian sewers where those effluents wandered until they reached out into the undying ocean, where the wealth of 12-headed Hydra collected senators and emperors' incontinence, and even as her hand reached out to blow back that kiss, Herculaneum lay in Vesuvius's lava and ash, its citizens embalmed in molten rock. More to come. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here tonight, and I'm delighted to introduce Giorgia Pavlidou, who is a writer and painter who has lived in the Benelux, California, and India, where she studied Urdu literature at Lucknow University. Giorgia received her MFA from the Manchester Writing School in the United Kingdom. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Mantanon Dada Journal, Beacon Radiant Anthology, Clockwise Cat, Aerial Archipelago, and the Anthology of Sparring with Beatnik Ghosts. Her recent full-length publications include Haunted by the Living, Fed by the Dead from Anvil Tongue Books, and Female Body Retold, just came out last year from Spine and Bible. Giorgia is currently based in Greece. Welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Can you hear me?
We can.
Perfect. Thank you, and thank you for your poems, for reading your poems, and happy birthday. So I'll start with one of your poems, an older poem, Dissipating Cloud Cover, published in World Literature Today in 2015. Storm break, distances, unseen from the storehouse, lap of rain on the shingles, sky on a downcast brow, waiting for a message, waiting for a missive, gathering in its mystery. I'll read another one in between my own poems. So I'll read one from Female Body Retold. I need to change glasses. I'm over 50 now, Mark. Metaphysics of a Pink Bedroom. An ambitious girl from Macedonia, I think, trained in Germany to maneuver herself in every pornographic position imaginable. Ex-researcher of Pierre Bourdieu at the Sorbonne, familiar as well with Whitman and Ginsberg, reserved for a Balkan lady, I thought, even when drunk on Guinness. Something happened, she said, before she'd grown pubic hair, a mixture of noir folklore and illegal porn. She looked 36, this recently grown-up Balkan chick, the age she'd reached in 16 years. 36, very old, she said. But who doesn't fear old age when it keeps on kicking in your childhood's door? I pondered on how 5 billion years were needed for the solar system to produce her story, and for both of us to squirm in a molded bed, incapable of escaping reality's fungus, experiencing the uncanny metaphysics of a pink bedroom. Perhaps it's common in Macedonia, I mused inside my head, this talent for French sociology and this gratis tears rolling down one's cheeks. Elliptical drops resembling disfigured circles around the sun, as elliptical and incomprehensible as French theory, with copies of her words echoing in all important airports of the European Union. Slavonic breathing, while it seemed as if it never would stop raining outside. Sighs, waiting near a pile of overstuffed working-class garbage bags, harboring a few mute body parts and a smiling unloaded gun, plus the obese excrements of mid-21st century urban rats. Impossible to redeem oneself, even when flagellating oneself, I thought, and I admired her face, a weeping nation of deeply stunning scars, an innocence so blinding, capable of setting one's gaze on fire, a human pile of unwelcomed love on a severely guillotined bed, and that, without reality's agony at hand, to run towards and escape into. Meet here, two sorrowful and lonely orgasms, lingering on a reality-infested bled. Not truly like hurricanes, but pointless like unused body parts, or loudly laughing unloaded guns. Many elliptical heads must have rolled from this guillotined bed, she said, invisible only to those who have succeeded in failing to avoid loving someone else, despite having plenty of reality's agony at hand to run towards and escape into, I thought, but abstained from saying back. An unsarcastically smiling sky. Time's dissolving me in front of an unsarcastically smiling sky. Hollow trees roll their eyes. Missing cobblestones laugh at my future non-existence. It is there where you're headed, a voice in my head whispers, towards your absence. Come all, drink from the fountain of my non-being, the voice makes me say out loud, but none of the random passers-by moves in my direction. Why on 8th Street for Philip Lamantia? Contemplating my poetry ancestors, not Sappho, but Hildegard from Bingen and Lala came to mind. And unexpectedly, these two co-joined conjured up St. Coltrane's image. A Siamese striplet bound by the blinding intensity of the living light. Listen, in a uniquely visual way, to the sound of this light, turn inward and hear mandalas meander on pineappled boundaries of the pre-sex brain. This is Hildegard's syntax. Tuis etiam sociam galorum et civis sanctorum. You are indeed the companion of the angels and a citizen of holiness. Enormous transparent lakes filled with whirling black dolphins stay suspended high up in turquoise summer sky. My mind boomed with this view, and half notes grilled my body. Via 3rd and 7th Street, I was guided to 8th Street. Philip, on 8th Street, my body re-entered the uterine source of life. It is there where you'll find Hildegard's syntax. Caritas abundat in omnia semis excellentissima supersidera. Love abounds in all, from the depths exalted and excelling over every star. Gonna read one more of yours. Mark, short one. Until noon. Briefly sat, the grasses drooping, staring at their roots bowed under the current, as if in wishing to say what they would have liked to. The tears have gathered at the tips of their questioning heads. I still have time for a few short ones.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Nudity. This naked brain, though part of the body, is divorced from it. This bare body, though part of the brain, exists uniquely in the nudity of the head. Even the head exists only in the braininess of the brain. All brains are bare. Their bareness smiles and glows when I heedlessly try and dress the headless bodies in which the brain dwells so well. urban love. Frigid cement hitting up bricks pathologically in love. Emboldened brains of stone, as expensive as geometric glass, animated by the architecture of lack. Isn't this the burden of non-synthetic sex? And I'm going to end with one dedicated to Artaud. Saudade for Antoine. Reading Artaud's poems, I tasted the kind of love one might experience for the last time, for something one knows for sure you've never held dear. And the words helped me peel the silence from myself, out of an oval form nested inside my imagination, a form shaped like a coffin or a yearning for the sole thing that won't ever happen, yet has happened so many times before in the distant future. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup, Giorgia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next we hear from Olivia Wu, whose poems have appeared in Aberration Labyrinth, Shenzhen Weekly, First Literary Review East, Quail Bell Magazine, Poetry Quarterly, Brevitas Anthology of the Short Poem, Brownstone Poets Anthology, and Great Weather for Media Anthology. Olivia is a member of Brevitas, an invited community of poets, and she currently resides between Louisville, Kentucky, and the deep woods of southern Indiana. Welcome, Olivia.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to celebrate your birthday. Happy birthday, Mark.
Thank you.
When I first got exposed to Mark's work, I was deeply enchanted. Not providing answers, Mark's poems trigger and stimulate readers to generate fresh and profound questions, to expand their scope of awareness, and make unexpected connections in the process. So here is Mark's poem that I first got acquainted in 2015. It's titled, let me see, The Inner Eye Tattooed. It has 6 parts. I'm gonna read part 1, 2, 3, and 6. The inner eye tattooed. 1. Looking in like a snail, my nose crawls against glass, how the view alters up close, and the breath, a mountainous fog against matter's impermeable will. Isn't this the color of pure silence, that rainbow tint when night swallows reflections? 2. In the nothingness of the primordial, words written before, words unknown, and the constellations, planetoid hope, stars flush against the skin of a peeled eye, a stocking with inner meaning rewritten in paper, on wood, carved in stone, rewritten for a cavern of gnawed bone, fragments scattered in a semblance of home. 3. To breathe in that dust, to test the synapses with potential meaning, a gun barrel, a gin bottle, a diode, vermouth, a grenade, and at a raised knife point, within night, this moronic light cutting deep into the gilded dome. Civilizations compounded in the chicken gut of divinations, and that round pill of morning purpled in the royal cloak of an inevitable twilight, that mad aerial dance of sparrows beyond our crinkled silver lining. 6. I know, you want clarity, an illuminated mind, not those fleeting visions of a future not yet born. You want it all inked, a universe outwardly branded in the foundry, the blast furnace of structure in the making, and a tremolo of voices slowly breaking. And here is a poem of mine written 2 months ago. Earthing, barefoot in the woods. Birds' chirpings are not only about mating, but also about atmosphere, more serene and so salubrious. Tranquil land and that bare feet walk upon is pulsing with insights deeper than birds chattering, even at unexpected turns to reveal root causes of those unresolved mysteries. It becomes clear the best cure is to reverse certain habits instead of a patented pill. Rain with its misty softness drizzles into streams, flowing downhill in different directions. Self-reliant yet open, persistent yet agile, devoid of any remote possibility of getting stuck. The intensifying sunlight also amplifies every somberness to allow for clarity of contrast of all shades of truth. Coyotes howling echoes every void of silence. A terrifying sound may not aim at invoking terror, but rather a cry for help or love or both. When stillness lasts long enough, it crystallizes into a clue. The best way to love is to leave you be, so we may grow more purely into you and me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Sorry, it took me a while to unmute there for a second. We are delighted now to hear from Sharon Mesmer, who is a poet, fiction writer, essayist, and teacher. Her most recent poetry collection, Greetings from My Girly Leisure Place from Blue Books, was voted Best 2015 by Entropy magazine. Her other poetry collections are Annoying Diabetic Bitch, The Virgin Formica, Half Angel, Half Lunch, and Vertigo Seeks Affinities. 4 of her poems appear in Postmodern American Poetry, and many of her recent works appear in Fence, New American Writing, American Poetry Review, On the Seawall, Posit, Maintenant, The Arts Fuse, and others. Her poetry collection in Romanian by Doru Mugur, Ciar Așa, Just This, was published by Charmides Bucharest in 2021. Sharon is also the author of 5 fiction collections, including The Empty Quarter and In Ordinary Times from Hanging Loose, and Ma Vie à Yongo from Hachette in French translation. Her essays, reviews, and interviews have appeared in the New York Times, New York Magazine, The Cut, Paris Review, American Poetry Review, Commonweal, Teachers and Writers, and the Brooklyn Rail. Her awards include a Joron Foundation Mentoring Award and 2 New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowships. Sharon teaches in the undergraduate and graduate programs of New York University and the New School, and we are delighted to have you tonight. Thank you, Sharon, for being here.
Thank you, Mark, for asking me to read. I'm really delighted. Happy birthday, happiest of birthdays, and thanks to Cassandra and John as well for putting this together. I'm just going to read 2 short poems by Mark and 1 short poem by me. I'm not, if you see me flinching, it's because somebody is doing rifle practice around here. You might be able to hear it. It's a little ridiculous. Can you really hear it? Yeah, there's like gunshots going off out there. This is, I'm not in Brooklyn now. I'm in our house in the Poconos, and people just are gun crazy up here. So I'm not in Brooklyn. So Mark, I don't have your books here, but I went through the interwebs and found some poems that I thought would mesh with my poem that I'm going to read. So this is your poem, Ritual. Nonsensical to pass through each house, to clear the air of ghosts by ringing a rusty temple bell. The light of the April day scorns your true beauty, even when my heart is in an angle the sun elevates. Hold out your hands and spin in a circle, dervishly. Of course, you are adored by the dreamers, and the love you seek will be poured upon you. In time, the fellowships of ancient societies fade, the spirits in all their kindred fallacies too. All the sense is in the grain of the wood, deep in the structure, and when it has been struck by lightning, the scarred grief holds us up by our feet. Tenuous, an old man traversing rocks in a flowing stream. I'd love to be able to lie to you, but my hands reveal all the fire of that kiss from forever, the storm that raised the cornfields, the bounties unleashed in the rain. Ashes, on the other hand, can be deceiving. For now, let us just stroll into the distance where the sun flies low along this plot of land. And this is your poem, Song of Enchantment. To enchant a spell between the rush of bodies, a primal urge to seek out wild frontiers, to go, flow toe to toe with the forested bears, and in the singing to sweeten that background noise. To delight in coolest mornings where the lone finch sings for its mate from the tree's peak that it thinks is a mountain. To be encountered in all of this and this, straight above that noise, in line of sight with the horizon and the candle wick burning down to a low glow, to unleash everything that might have been, a speck of radiation, a silent overture to that which never concludes, but rises and rises. And this is my poem, Build That Chariot. Sorry, I got the title of my own poem wrong. It's Build This Chariot. Sorry. Build this chariot. Build it now. Build it with a syrinx redolent of poppers. Build it by flooding the continental hem with vino tinto and bacalao. Flood it now. Flood it with shredded clinic morsels in a basket. Appropriate it from its original clock out function as you clock out shredding now. Your name is Cloud. You farm a cow in fields rife with horses. You wipe your mouth a lot. You cup. You run hard, go long with hits in a wild west, giggling and ratcheting and releasing weevils built of bricks. Thick-set and generous, your brick nuts activate the nuts inside my woodwork, which I dap beside you. I dap there now. 'Cause I aim to come correct, siphon the derelict chamber with looting as I lope. Because it's a perimeter, it's a mitzvah. When building strips come incessant with bulbs and strange waiting and building and more building, and we together build this chariot, build it strong and strange with necks and squeaks, and flood it with shredded clinic morsels. We build this chariot, we build it now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. That was amazing. And your reading was amazing, and my work as well. Thank you so much.
Your work was definitely amazing.
I appreciate it so much. Next, we have from Paul Hetherington, who is an eminent Australian scholar and poet who has published numerous full-length poetry and prose collections, a verse novel, and 12 chapbooks. Paul has won and has been nominated for more than 30 national and international awards and competitions, most recently winning the inaugural Marion Hailing Award in 2024. He is head of the International Poetry Studies Institute and joint founding editor of the international online journal Axon, Creative Explorations. He also founded the International Prose Poetry Group in 2014 with Cassandra Atherton, my co-host. He has co-authored prose poetry and introduction and co-edited an anthology of Australian prose poetry from Melbourne University Press. Welcome, Paul. There, Paul.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much, Mark. Everyone hear me?
Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm just going to, happy birthday, Mark. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks very much for inviting me, and thanks to Cassandra as well. I'm going to read a poem from the little book of Earthly Delights that Mark published not so long ago. This poem's called Carnivorous. East of the mountains, consider the inscriptions. They have always been moved by the flourishing crops. The winds and strings take charge. Remember the song, the gaze, the centuries bristling with anger, like flowers in flight. I really love that poem, Mark. I'm going to now read just the last section from my most recent book, Sleeplessness. And I've timed it. It'll take about 5 minutes, I think. And the speaker is insomniac and lying in bed and reflecting on various aspects of that experience. And this section's called 6 a.m. A book is a door, slanting at morning, words a membrane, misted by sun. The room disperses night's revenants. Holding the book, you roll in the sheets as if with a lover. Holding the book as if it's a body and absurdly trying to kiss, a body and book, as if each is the other, as if words become blood. You sniff at pages that nudge your pillow, press end papers against your palm, trying to find yourself in translation. Like a new form of sleep or restlessness, you start reading again. Eloquence, standing clear and apart like a Japanese castle, a language built for long habitation. Murasaki's indelible accents like a vast architecture or glistering lake or ornate folding screen. Her words become water with fumbling currents, throwing figures onto the sibilant page. Words bubble toward a dark purple dress. There are slivers of sunshine and quick skews of rain, as if your speech wets the clean pages. Yet your voice keeps the rhythm of formal address. It creates gardens already lost in the 11th century, Words assume the steps of a dance, the sound of drumming. Despite formality, insouciance gathers our arms and legs. Your reading addresses vernacular feeling. Your mouth comprehends banished views of noble houses. The present swells in excavations of speaking's art. In its intricate bones and elaborate grammar, your arm on the sheet is like a time-worn sentence. There's manicured landscapes we barely credit. At Middle River, rain falls inward. Hints of bodies behind a screen, how to decipher their unknown names. You say words might be a river crossing. Your running words become perfumed liquid. Language carries in its saturations our identities like a form of flotsam, how we float away from each other in language's lattice. Boats on a harbour, expanses of water which meanings won't touch. With a gale's onset, the page starts to tighten as if it's a sail. We arrive at a shoreline, inspecting shells that the story ejects, or they might be our numerous failings. Near an old house, we wander through shinable grass, an expedition into collaring desire. You speak of belonging to viney language more than to life, then say life is language, entwining and tight, there's no separation. Murasaki's verbs are like secateurs. I suppose literature does stand apart. I say I live best in Murasaki's words. I'd hold you now behind a shoji screen. Love's punctuations cause your words to dilate and halt. You read again, and it's as if the page hangs a wide mirror. The language locates, spoiling thoughts we refuse to name. Thanks very much to Pierian Springs Press for publishing that book, and happy birthday again, Marc.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's amazing. Thank you. And now we're delighted to hear from my sister, Dominique Vincenz, who is an Erickson International Professional Coach and Canadian Certified Addictions Recovery Coach, who works with a broad range of people struggling with substance abuse and process addiction issues. Dominique is also a trauma-informed yoga and meditation teacher and has taught yoga and mindfulness practices for over a decade at some of Vancouver's top yoga studios, addiction centers, psychiatric hospitals, as well as first responders. As a person in long-term recovery, she knows firsthand the many challenges that her clients endure, as well as the potential for a joyful, healthful, and connected life. Dominique speaks 3 languages. I think actually she speaks a little bit more, but she's modest. English, French, and German, and has traveled the world extensively and is always ready for a new adventure. She's also my sister.
Happy birthday, Marc. Whenever I'm invited to come on here, I literally feel like I'm going to have a heart attack because I'm talking in front of a whole bunch of people that write amazing poetry and prose, and I also don't want to screw up Marc's poems. So I can actually feel my heart beating out. I think you could probably see it if you were very close. So I'll do my best. So Marc's asked me to read 3 things. I'll try not to take up too much time. And he asked me to choose one from a little book of earthly delights, and the one that I chose is called The Great Pause. The bright light in the window offer the plainest of views. It's as if a great finger of time has depressed the button. Even the earth rattles less. Across the land, streets are empty, highways are barren, all the plain and beautiful truths revealed. How do you feel? Asks my neighbor on the phone. My dog stares at me with the vigor he once had, and endless passing and throwing of rubber toys. I cannot speak for you, I tell my neighbor. It's a perfect time to shop at Walmart, he tells me. A new pair of Nikes his son wanted alone on the shelf. Meanwhile, everything has been laid bare by a single pangolin. Can that be? I ask myself. Woohoo, says my dog. Second is from No More Animal Poems. I think this is probably one of my favorites. Daddy's Vicarious Cockroaches. It began with Daddy's fart, and not just any old fart, but one that stirred the plaster walls into emulsion. At first, the neighbor imagined it was a Richter 3 or 5, an uneven number. Meanwhile, his wife was happily baking spiced apple rum cake in the kitchen. But it soon abated, and finally even the cat calmed, her bristles nestling in a soft, slow curl, and the air cooled. And in that infinite quiet, they burst forth, striking circus poses, clowns cramming into a minicar, tapping their red noses to the rhythm of the ringmaster's adjutant, tossing confetti and spinning plates, leaping like lions and poodles and well-trained turtles, strumming their sensuous strings, showering themselves in a dusty love for living. And all over his torso they scattered in the hundreds, as if torn from the very foundation of matter. They sprayed across his chesty pastures like those city folks in 1666 when London Bridge was falling down for the upteenth time, or Nero diddling on his proto-Stradivarius playing Goodbye Norma Jean as his sandcastles tumbled into the Tiber. Daddy leapt up with a yelp and stubbed his toe, squashing several on his way down to the floor. They scurried into the crevices and corners, no doubt looking for some more welcoming pastures. But when all was said and done, I caught the last of them, smoking gun in hand, creeping out the back door. I had to let him go. And this is the final one from City of Lemons. So I got to tell you, I don't smoke marijuana, but I think it would be helpful in situations like this to be a marijuana smoker, because I have to read this so many times. Actually, I have to confess, I have to read quite a lot of Marc's poems, considering what it might be like to be slightly under the influence, but we are a little bit different. So from City of Lemons, 23,417. The number of folk to turn over tonight. The number of souls crushed to dust. Count them on all your 7 fingers, I thought. Then the anteater had a thought. I remember once in the old world when Zimmer's bookstore still had an awning. I must have been, what, 15? At that time, the precepts were not so strict, and old man Zimmer's portrait hung high over the register, gazing down with condescending eyes. What are you reading tonight? They asked. At first, I stuck to the classics, the antediluvian Wells, the Valmusian diaries, the Idols of Usefulness, and high upon the top shelf, out of old Zimmer's line of sight, Eve St. Elixir's backfiring motorcycles. All this via Parliament before the Constitution was repealed and each city was on its own speaking terms. But then, on a foggy day in my own still city of lavender, over tea and secret shots of dynamite, and a breeze that drew off the Atlantic, young man Zimmer showed me his father's secrets. From before, way before the stone was extracted, when governments tumbled upon each other and every military coup was a president, and 5 credits could buy you a beer. The world was full of books. Words rained down, even when you were not there. Back then, they were all marionettes, their limbs wired and backfired, and few paid attention. Young man Zimmer and I did our shots behind the sociology section. We smoked a Cuban cigar and touched each other's chests. My Angora sweater upheld his caresses. Still, the incense in the shop, patchouli I recall, or perhaps it was the Havanese cigar, led us to believe that everything in our lives had led to this moment. We were of one mind, he and I. And that afternoon in his father's secret chambers, he showed me books from every corner of the globe, every written period of history, mysteries and untold fortunes, unspeakable prayers and incantations. In those old days, they bound their knowledge in leather and vellum and paper so fine it could fly. It was such a simple thing, this moment of shared wisdom. All we had to do was pretend. Happy birthday.
Thank you, love. Your reading was amazing. Next, we hear from Robert Archambeau, who is a novelist, critic, and poet. His most recent books on the novel Alice B. Toklas is Missing and the critical study Poetry and Uselessness from Coleridge to Ashbery. Robert chairs the English department at Lake Forest College, sorry. And we'll stick his website in the chat. Welcome, Robert.
Hey, thank you, Mark. Happy birthday, brother. It is amazing to me that you are older than I am until the moment when I look at your list of publications. And then I think you really should be much older than you are. Prolific. So if I've understood the nature of the occasion correctly, people are reading some of their own work and some of Mark's work. I'm not going to do it that way for 2 reasons. The first, and Mark, it pains me to say this, but the first reason is this is not about me. This is about you. And the second reason is I think I'm here among the poets to represent the novelists of the world. And because some of you might not know, Mark is also a novelist among his many other achievements. So there's not really time to read a chapter of one of mine and a chapter of one of his. So you're going to get a chapter of one of his. It's going to take about 9 minutes to give it a read. It is from a novel called Station H2O. And the chapter has a title, which, if you don't know, in contemporary fiction publishing is a daring thing. Not since the Victorians have we titled our chapters. Mark's doing it because Mark does things his way. So this is a chapter from Station H2O called The First Lecture. The man likes to carry the umbrella for when the nights divide themselves. You don't want the stars to fall on your head, he says. He treads the bazaar in all his finery, his jewelry, his wooden rings and red beads, saffron robes and a golden earring in one ear, and scrutinizes the workmanship, the weave or the weft. Each stall, another find. Each sweater on its maker's sweat, the frills and laces on this camisole, the stitching, and of course the labels. This one says it's made in Hong Kong, he says. Do you know how many tailors live in Hong Kong? I shake my head. 36,342, he says, then moves on. Next, he's up to his elbows in rice. Is it basmati, jasmati, or aboriomati? Is it OM 504 or OM 5451? Grown on the tamarind fields of Garamingor, the salesman says. My umbrella man shakes his head, grumbles under his breath, and moves on. Do you want to know the true nature of religion? He says finally, looking straight at me. There's a fleck of something floating in his beard, and it's distracting. Ah, did you find the one bit of meat in the soup? He says. Pluck it out and eat it right now, he says, fluffing up a pillow. And I do. And it tastes of cardamom and cloves. Bet you think it tastes of King Solomon, he says. This paper was made in Hangzhou, he says, in front of the kite stall, waving it in the air, hand painted by a team of wives, no less, he says. Let me tell you one thing, one singular thing. To move forward, you need to rid yourself of your blathering ghosts, all those mothers and fathers, he says, jabbing a tentacle of grilled octopus with pointy bamboo skewer, chewing briefly and moving on. Find the hole in the donut, the nut in the hole, he says. Look no further, he says. I'm the guy you're looking for. Extract yourself from yourself, he says, removing his reading glasses. Everything you know is wrong. How much did your mother love you, he says, chewing a nut or a seed. No, don't answer that. Show me. I stretch my arms out wide as if to embrace the cosmos. Aren't you shooting a little big, he says. I just want to dance around a star, I say. Ah, a macro man. Why not start small? Among the bees and ants, I say. You can find it all in the palm of one hand, he says, holding out his cupped hand, and at the very center is a flower petal, near white, but curling toward gray, almost like a downy feather. The hummingbird, he says, then walks down the alley until only his shadow remains. You say Jesus made this journey too, he says, lighting a block of incense. That's what the Japanese man with the tattoos told you. In the end, we're all indigenous, he says. No amount of pencil work will color you in, I say. I say, he says. I say, which Jesus? The one that colonized half the world? We've had the Romans here too, he says. They left their gladiators behind. And from somewhere he pulls a sword, maybe a wildly curved scimitar, slashes the air and says, I'm here. So I walk the cooked path up to his house, past the guards and the blood dogs who all but tossed their eyes at me. The front door was wide open and he was sitting cross-legged in his saffron robes. His long hair was oiled and hanging precariously down his shoulders. Give me back my days, he said to his followers in the courtyard, and I'll take you where you tell me. They chanted back in unison. There was fish curry for dinner, plenty of vegetables and rice, flatbreads and pickles, 13 dolls, I counted, all laid out on the picture-perfect buffet behind us. 2 servants were bringing in metal dishes, forks, and spoons. Umbrella, I knew, always ate with his fingers, so this was for his acolytes. Let the journey begin, Umbrella said, as the crowd dispersed and beelined for the buffet. He struck an impressive figure sitting there with his toes upturned, facing the sun as he did on his sundial seat, operated by 2 young men in loincloths. Aren't you joining us? He said. He smiled. I only eat 2 times a week and mostly just fruit. Our mind may have expanded over the centuries, but our bowels have not. Besides, better to eat from the tree of life. But I understand the cravings of the flesh or for the flesh. I once lived very far from here in a land of skyscrapers and smog. Believe it or not, I was an accountant, one of the worst kind, for I loved pressing all those red buttons, cranking the handle for lines and lines, for ciphers and ciphers. I was a perfectionist down to the last decimal. But as I rode home on my bicycle at night, the road rose up around me. I felt as if my head was falling into pieces. How could this man be a number cruncher, a tax evader, a money launderer, I thought, in my imploding head? Oh, just got out of my head, I thought, but inadvertently said. Expulsion, he said. All those toxins build up in the bloodstream. I haven't a word for you yet, I said. 1,000 miles away, down the coast, the trees are swaying with coconuts, the bananas dangling over every street and alley among the laundry lines and air conditioning units. We left words behind us and arrived here with falling stars on our heels. The natives took us in and fed us. We rented a small hut on the beach among the dunes and palm trees. The crabs were everywhere, on telephone poles, on roofs, hanging precariously from gutters. We had to sweep the porch twice a day to ensure we didn't get nipped, but every once in a while, one would creep up on you. And before you knew it, he was on your shoulder or your head. In this place, all the evidence was on display, hearts on sleeves, so to say. And was it humid? Sweat dribbled down your chin night and day. You didn't mind the crabs. It was the mosquitoes and the flies that got you. And despite the bites, you tanned like a native, and within days, you seemed to swim around the current of the people down at the market and along the beach. You took to weaving on a bamboo loom. You favored bright orange and stark pink, and you wrapped your tousled dark curly hair in a green scarf made of raw silk to keep away the crabs, you said. I know Umbrella considered our little holiday an unnecessary extravagance. It's a lot to ask for, but keep your luxuries at a minimum, he had said. That day, he was sitting under a pear tree with his cloak enfolding his thin frame, a red-headed woman's scattered petals at his feet. Back in the early days, when I was still an accountant, and by the way, I was chartered, the world seemed to consist of multiples. There is not such a thing as just the one. To tout a cliche, half empty, half full, one equals I, and I contain multitudes, Umbrella says. Did you like working as an accountant? Dorothy asks. I did thoroughly enjoy it. If you believe in a logical universe, everything seems to have its slot and its practical place in the puzzle. Then, all at once, everything seems possible. Worlds can be conquered, mastered, but more importantly, the multitudes who inhabit the world. So yes, 10 tones is all I ever knew, but I played like a maestro with those 10 tones, and every melody pointed south, pointed to the truth. The truth, I say, adjusting my rubber boots. We're about to walk into the jungle for the final weekend meditation among the foliage, the insects, and the birds. A musical puzzle, Dorothy says. Those are the ones I love the most. We're low, on the edge of the jungle, about to enter another world of sensations, and it's hot, and it's humid. It must be 100 degrees. Here, everything has been transformed by fire, Umbrella says, leading the way, and in his robes he slips and weaves through the thicket like he's done this 1,000,000 times. Don't laugh, he laughs. I know I'm a bit awkward in my robe. I, too, contain platitudes, he says. Happy birthday, Mark.
Bob, what a reading, man. That was fantastic. Thank you. Amazing. The next here from Lorette C. Luzajic, who's an artist, writer, editor, educator in Toronto, Canada. Lorette writes prose poetry and small stories, usually inspired by visual art. She's also the founder of the Ekphrastic Review, a journal of literature inspired by art, and the Mackinaw, a journal of prose poetry in Canada. Her own words have been widely published in journals and anthologies, and her award-winning mixed media artwork has been collected in over 40 countries so far. Welcome, Lorette.
Thank you so much, and happy birthday, Mark. What an honor it is to be here to read with all of you and to have this opportunity to discover more of Mark's work. So the few of the poems I had selected have already been read. So I'm going to read another one and hope I'm not doubling up, but I love this one, Cabinet of Curiosities. Tidy creatures, suspicious of chaos, expecting the immutable order of earth as it is in heaven, meticulous gods, librarians of knowledge, keepers of fine-tuned natural laws, each thing filed in compartments, classified, labeled, dividing space into place and edible time into minutes, seconds, which furnish contents, a coherence and definition, a meaning for everything. What of a cosmogony that holds up the heavens, the phoenix feather and the nodules of a dragon, the tail of the lynx or the shell of the scarab, that organized realm of predetermined sequences, a museum where all can be seen with thine own eyes, the setting required for any narrative, the scene of the crime. What a wonder comer on stage for the performance of fear and desire, an archive of passion and vision, an enlightened structure of intention. But what when the audience has departed, and what of the endless streams of water that run through rock, carrying with them the memory of time, the topography of spirit under the borrowed names of ancient sages who devoured the text in order to apprehend it, that the continuum of ingrained immortality in the ashes, which are the soil of existence, a syllogism on which we rely, weary in our loaded information, weary in our self-inflicted exile. Thank you for this intriguing poem. I have two prose poems to read to you from my collection, Winter in June, and one is about death and the other one is about life. The first one is called The Nightingale, and it starts out by quoting John Keats, "Darkling, I listen. I dreamed that you would sing something else, that there was still time. If I'd ever thought about it more carefully, I would have guessed you would fall from the edge of the earth, that you would be a Chatterton or Wilde, brilliant and beautiful, eternal, pure. With your pure romanticism and all that poetry, it would have been obvious had it only ever crossed my mind. If not this, you would have been torn apart by lions, or poisoned with laudanum or belladonna by a jealous suitor. You would suffer the slow dance down, die of consumption in something purple and velveteen like Wolfgang wore to his last requiem. You would be smashed to terrible pieces in a car crash or no, a train derailment just outside of St. Petersburg. Even when I was losing you, I didn't pay any attention. You told me not to. You were planning your new symphony, as if a little old virus was going to stop you. And then you were out like a light, snapped away in a startled blink. I have your voice still, spooled on an old cassette tape. You were 9, with a falsetto as pure and clear as a castrato or a goldfinch. It hurts to go back to that time, but sometimes I have to, just so I can hear you. From here, I can hear what we could not hear then, those tolling bells. We carried on as if we had our whole lives ahead of us. And the second one is called Night Flight. Imagine we were half bird. Our flight is fleeting, yes, but still we sometimes slipped into the sky. You are new to this world and don't know the half of it. Even so, you show us the way. How to slay the dragons, how to turn the page. We gnaw on plastic poultry legs and rubbery bananas, and you fake punch a random price into a toy cash register. Hold your grubby paw out for my pocket full of coins. I wouldn't have wished the world on you, but here you are. You have arrived, starry-eyed and surprised. You have a blue-green bike and a matching bow in your hair. You love cucumbers and mangoes and the frilliest pajamas. Every word is a victory, and you're starting to string them together. We were dancing in our sock feet in your toy room, stripes and polka dots a blur in your swirl. If only we had more ice cream, you say, when I pull out the goodnight story. You stall for time before lights out. And I guess it's the same for all of us. Lord, just one more year, just one more day. But soon you are drifting through the clouds, and I watch sleep soften your small face. The moon is your witness, I think, kissing you where she does on your dimple. I cover you in a thin sheet. Watch your shifting shoulders, small wings dark as earth. Thank you very much.
Lorette, that was quite amazing. Thank you. Next we hear from Dominique Hecq, who is also in Australia and also in Melbourne, and who's widely anthologized. She writes in English and French. Dominique's creative works comprise a novel, 6 collections of short stories, and 17 books of poetry, together with Volte Face and Autopos, her bilingual sequence. Pistes de Rêve appeared in 2024, among other honors such as the Melbourne Fringe Festival Award for Outstanding Writing and Spoken Word Performance, the Warilla Prize for Fiction. Dominique has also won the New England Poetry Review Prize for Poetry, the Martha Richardson Medal for Poetry, and the inaugural Altira Prize for Literary Translation. Dominique is a recipient of the International Best Poets Prize administered by the International Poetry Translation Research Center in conjunction with the International Academy of Arts and Letters. And more recently, she has won the James Tate Prize for Poetry. Welcome, Dominique, from Australia.
Thank you so much, Mark, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'm going to read from There Might Be a Moon or a Dog. It was an impulse purchase. And I'm going to read a kerfuffle. I love that word. Steeped in ancient Chinese tea, a leaf blown astray into hot water. The courage it takes to drink a leaf. Was that on your list? Are you still frightened by that voice from your childhood or that calling? It has been said, disarm me against myself. All crumpled up, say you, a piano player by nature, it has been said. Out in the garden, the cypress opens for you, as if the wind were the breath of an ocean and the pools were heaped with flowers. The mountain buckets elated, swinging from the rock, tearing the air to ribbons deep into the hills. And then I'm going to read a poem from Volte Face. The opening poem, Borges and I. I sit by the opening of this labyrinthine library between a dark angel and his gossamer-clad acolyte. I point my boat out to sea, clutching memories of life and love, only to return to the shore. Its slippery pebbles, white and porous, soon grey with soot and red with rust. These bleeding trails of flickering flames. Borges' hair is on fire. He says, poets have to remain with a concrete image. All language, Arolon, is abstract. Take the work rock. It's both more and less than an actual rock, he says. All we could ever work with is the experience of the 5 senses. I'd say they are more than 5 senses. Thoughts, I'd say, are sensed, and the movement of thought is perceptible. There are pre-verbal and pre-conceptual experiences. My skin is burning. Look, I snap, gesturing to the window. Hail flung at us, drops of water trickling down the glass, sleet refracting baubles of light hung in the sky's wall, rocks fast sparking, your mind's birded flight. And equally ready to fly, says Borges. Words peck at your skull, their beak punctuating and punctuating the long sentence of memory on the page of your mind. Time quietly leaves the scene, wind skimming over the surface of the sea like an infinity net, looping your breath to its rough face with a single monochromatic brush stroke. I extend my hand, try to touch his darkness. Don't cry for the moon, he says. I climb the rainbow into the night and reach for a web of stars, take a leap of faith and fall in a poem that reminds me of Wuthering Heights. I hear you calling, feel the formlessness of the wind scratch my heart, unwinding its chambers and tributaries. I drink the moon dry. And I'll read now the title poem of this book, Volte-face. It's day one and there is no way out. I dash out the door, follow her through streets sizzling in noon sun. Her back is burned like oxhide. Her hair is glowing ruby. Though she remains an indistinct figure with a limp, I name her Philomena. I follow her through the hotel gate, revolving door, entrance lobby, two pairs of glassy eyes. Let them call the police. Room 33. She goes through, I close the door, she turns around, my blood chills. Did she recognize me? I hide behind my phone, take a picture, flee. Cops with blue beards at the gate, I tear through. This is a noir gone awry, an experiment in how to lead an investigation. It works by means of figuration and indirection. Out of breath, I stop in my tracks. Lost, I take out the phone from my pocket. In the photo, her features are indistinct. Her steel eyes cut through the screen. The air bristles. Mother, who sent you? I freeze. Her hair comes alive with snakes. Thanks for having me and happy birthday again, Marc.
Thank you, Dominique. That was fantastic. Thank you. Next, we hear from Kevin Gallagher, who's a poet, publisher, and political economist living in Greater Boston. Kevin's latest book of poems, And Yet It Moves, was published by Manhattan Press in 2023. And he also edits Spoke, which is now in its 11th year, a Boston-based annual of poetry and poetics. Welcome, Kevin. You there? Oh, maybe not. Okay. So we'll move on to the next person. The next person would be Lydia Cortés, who is a poet and writer, and she's published 2 poetry collections, Lust for Lust and Whose Place, and she also appears in various anthologies and online zines over the years. Lydia is the recipient of 3 fellowship residencies at the MacDowell Colony, Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, and as well as as a residency at the Valparaiso in Mallorca, Spain. Welcome, Lydia.
Thank you very much. Feliz cumpleaños, Marc. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having invited me. I'm going to read 2 poems, one of your own, one of Marc's, and then one of my own. So this is by Marc. Half-truths. Read between the lines with your nefarious mind. Grammar isn't what it's cracked up to be. Look deep, stare, walk. Don't hold your breath. There's something underlying all this. Stop, underscore. A road half traveled less than more. Use it to reach a pivotal performance. Get your paycheck. The fallacy of believing, therefore, to be better, to be generous-minded, right here where all experience performs, fishing for the real American dream. Oh, you so misunderstand. And this is my own poem, Crush. Crush. My crush was leader of the gang, gorgeous, Garrison, buckled and belted, his jet leather hair, motorcycle, black like jacket, pompadour, just the right amount of peak, perfectly falling into an arc in the middle of his fair forehead. Jose Benitez. I snuck him looks all the time whenever I saw him in the street, the hallways of the apartment building where we both lived. Not that he knew it, never let him catch me looking, not that he ever really saw me. Jose Benitez. I was a little kid, una niña muy grande, pero not even 13. He was 16. The girls he liked were tight jean, American, blonde, his age or older. The girls he liked had gotten their periods, titties. The girls he liked made out, let themselves be touched, felt up, whatever, whenever he wanted, wherever they could, under hot staircases, in alleys, even in schoolyards, out in the open, they made out with Jose Benitez. When we finally met face to face, me and Jose Benitez, he just had his toe sewn back together after accidentally dropping a knife on it. That's all he was saying about the wound. When we finally met, we went toe to toe, me and Jose Benitez. But I didn't mean to. It was a clumsy mistake, the fault of the older girls, Jose's girls, who thought my crush cute, knowing how much I loved him and suffered in silence, laughing and hissing. They forced me on him, ready or not. Down the block, they pulled, dragged, shoved me toward Jose Benitez, screaming. They said it was time I get over my silly little girly shyness, meet him face to face, said I should let him know how I felt, or they would let him know that I was available, maybe. They pushed me right into him when we finally met, face to face, starry eye to eye, head on, me and Jose Benitez. And with my dainty size 9.5 Buster Browns, I severed the thread, dissolving the stitches that were keeping him together. Fuck you, yelled Jose Benitez. I was cursed by Jose Benitez. My first crush was my first love's toe, swaddled in layers of gauze, the toe I so savagely shattered as he stood, dark, sexy, unsuspecting of the coming assault, dungareed, long legs loosely straddled over his slim English bike. Oh, Jose Benitez, oh, Jose Benitez, oh, Jose Benitez, oh, I crushed my first crush's toe. And I, Dios mío, I, oh, I don't know whose pain was worse, who was more crushed, me or Jose Benitez. All I know, my loss was complete. Nothing could be done to save face, while his foot could still be stitched up to survive my crush. Thank you. Happy birthday again.
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you so much. Next, we hear from Andrew Joron, who is a poet, essayist, and speculative fiction writer. His poetry collections include The Absolute Letter from Flood and Trance Archive, New and Selected Poems from City Lights. Andrew's work of speculative fiction, OO, was published by Black Square Editions in 2022. The Triad Zero, a selection of his prose poems and critical essays, was published by Counterpath in 2007. Andrew is also a musician, and he plays the theremin in various experimental and free jazz ensembles, including one with Clark Coolidge, I believe. And he's also teaches creative writing at San Francisco State. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, thank you, Mark, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to read one of your poems. One of the things I've admired most about your work is the way it ranges over many universes of discourse, philosophy, science, and even science fiction. But the poem I'm going to read is a deceptively simple lyric poem called Word Caught on the Riverbank. By the river at night, water carries on at its own rugged pace. Within that, this crooked light, I shall give you my wildest words, for I will not need them anymore. You see, even in their sameness, differences may arouse a desire to cast a pebble and watch it skim ad infinitum. When I am dead, you may project me upon your sunlight, that I may throw shadows across your face and the faces of those you hold close. Forever, why is that word such a hard word to catch? And that was Marc Vincenz. So I'm just going to read three poems of my own. And this first one is entitled, Of All Predicament, the Predicate. First neither, then nor. Furor, then mirror. Where light reverses, where rain falls upward. Sky, the skin of another earth. But the tilt is too pronounced. There may be another season within reason, the sea, its own desert. A rhyme of time in place of us, minus, plus. Irrespective of any speaker, presides the predicate, a prayer kit, a kite. Okay, and this next one is entitled Duo Session. The premise is it's an interaction between two musicians. Nature music boxed. To work together is to work against. To be aware is to be at war. As one results in silence, two in sound. Wake up, says the hammer to the stone. Roar at earth's core. And listening requires practice. The smoke of location, the drift of rift after rift. Touch, tentative as ants' antennas, an alphabet too busy for words. Incessant static looks for its story. Hit hidden objects, let percussive ideas become echoes of perception. X relaxes in the arms of chance, most casual causality, arbitrary tree. Finally, to find no final line, O layer of word within word. The song that can't be sung needs a special kind of lyre. Lyre. And the last poem I will read is dedicated to Barbara Guest, a great poet who I was fortunate enough to get to know, a towering New York School poet. She came to live in San Francisco, where I got to know her. This poem is entitled The Barb. It was the age of capital. It was the age of golden dirigibles. We looked ridiculous, stopped in our elegant postures, no longer allowed to decorate the air with the notes of a harpsichord. Below us, those who toiled in mines and factories were given to sing the impossibility of song. Such melodrama is defensive rapture, a nail driven through smoke. After a century, our anatomy accumulates, rises, a cloud-like fortune, not the dust that we started with, but the dust that we became. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. So wonderful to see you here. And we'll see you at the Theatre of the Absurd in October, right? And next we hear from Daniel Tobin, who is the author of 9 books of poems, including From Nothing, winner of the Julia Howe Award, The Stone in the Air, his sweet versions of the German from Paul Celan, and Blood Labours, named one of the best poetry books of the year for 2018 by the New York Times. Dan's poetry has won many awards, among them the Massachusetts Book Award and fellowships from the NEA and the Guggenheim Foundation. His latest book, The Mansions, is a trilogy of long poems from a single design, which won the National Indie Award for Excellence in Poetry. It's an amazing book. Check it out. Welcome, Dan.
Welcome, Mark. Well, thank you, Mark. I'm so pleased to be here among you all. And again, happy birthday. I'm going to read one of your short poems because I believe it is kindred to the longer work of The Mansions. And then I'm going to read 4 sections from The Mansions, which I'll talk about briefly. Dissipating Cloud Cover by Marc Vincenz. Storm break distances unseen from the storehouse lap of rain on the shingles sky, a downcast brow waiting for a message, waiting for a missive, gathering in its mystery. That poem accomplishes so much in such a short space. And if you could see it on the page, it sort of exists as a kind of mobile of words in the air of the page, beautifully. I'm going to read 4 sections from the middle book of poems, which is on the life of Simone Weil, the great social justice advocate and philosopher and mystic. And this first, I guess I should say, section of the long design is called Harvest, and it's in the voice of one of her associates, Gustave Tobin. Like someone who has spent long hours among the vines, prematurely old, bent, that's how she looked to me that day we met in Avignon, who hadn't picked yet a single cluster, her face wan, faded like a fresco angel in the Palais de Paix. Only her eyes magnificent, only her eyes alone triumphed in that shipwreck of beauty with their look of something foreign to this world. She refused our room in Saint Marcel, chose the ruin, earthen floored beside the wood, its scatter of rat merd, its pine needle mattress and peasant's hearth, that one small window from which she'd view the Rhone. Her fairy tale house, she'd say, rest, fresh fruit, delicious air, the fear she felt of losing herself among the sensual pleasures. One time I found her sitting still on the tree trunk in front, lost in contemplation, and sensed just then a correspondence, the beauty of that soul and the landscape's tender majesty. But how raw her friends suffered her will for immolation, she who chided me for withholding my true measure of stripping myself away. For her, the beauty of the world was the mouth of a labyrinth. In the center, there God waits to eat the soul. So in Saint-Julien, she joined with harvesters, disappearing among rows of pendant grapes, embodied wine, cutting free the perfectly matured, bruise-colored fruit, hour by hour, for days, her sandaled feet bleeding, purifying her, she'd say, until I see the landscape as it is when I am not there. This section is called Dordogne. Ravidad is the person who discovered the Lascaux caves. Yes, Ravidad, to follow the rabbit down its winding hole below the limestone cliffs near Montignac. Perigord Noir with its oak forests where the river flows breakneck ahead from ancient Clouseau and lookout huts plotted for refuge against Rome, this parcel scorched for Aquitaine, its singers accorded to war, that exceeding music, to descend again into the whisper chamber, stone veil, womb of the species, and this time bring her with you, this scion, our secular saint, while above the latest conqueror clamors with its cavalcade. In this commodious cave, in the hall of bulls, aurochs rear parietal among dun horses, a great horned stag, its antlers flaring like ganglia along the swelled boss, axial, synaptic, pigments blotted, swabbed, tube sprayed in the tallow light. So the galleries unfold, breed-like in their earthen basilica, shaft, passageway, apse, and nave, rhino, bison, feline, bear. There, among the graven lattices and symbols, 1,000 overlapping and entangled, there, in the darkness, where the first imaginers lifted their long-flown scaffolds, a bird-headed man floats, stick figure, as though he'd risen, one beside one of his woolly extinctions, the vision, first inkling glimmer, a primal sprout out of the monkey mind. Above, new gods engrave their crooked crosses, yellow stars. Let her sit a while underground, alone in silence, with silence. Let her lift her hand once to feel the rootless at the root. And this next one is called Little Portion. She spent some time in the prayer sanctuary where St. Francis prayed, and this section channels some of Francis's own poems. In the eye between the Anschluss and the blood fires of Guernica, like a brilliant point of light beyond the Duce's folded arms, she has entered the Chiesietta Porziuncola, the little portion where the saint would kneel in prayer, where the raw wounds scored themselves into his feet and hands, his palms open, arms stretched wide, like one who embraced the firing squad. Tracer rounds of love shot from God's body to his own. Not in the great church, abominable, built around this cell, not under the high dome's atmosphere, but hunkered here, she feels for the first time alone something stronger than I. Though isn't God withdrawn from the universe, powerless within it, that compels her now to go down on her knees? Outside, brother sun pours over Umbrian hills his canticle of light. Sister moon hides patiently behind day's blue veil, while brother wind and sister water flow down and through the olive trees on the low descending slopes of sister earth. Somewhere under brother fire's stars, the saint is preaching to his congregation of birds, and all the wolves of Gubbio, benignly murderous, bowing, offer their paws to his hands. And if it must be sacrificed, this nothing, this created self, like the saint in his transito, is it only cold matter sifting into itself again, swap of energies, the nameless zero sum, not the sudden combustion of bluebirds from a raven flock, as little sister bodily death calls all her playmates home. And the last piece I'll read is called Fable. The section works backwards in time. So this is when she's a very young child. Windflower, anemone, summoned by the goddess's tears. When the lost king stumbles on a forest hut, he finds her, the beautiful sister of 6 brothers, changed by a stepmother into swans. He falls in love, and both make their way back to his kingdom, where he weds her and she bears a child the stepmother also steals. To prove her innocence, she must spin 6 shirts from the frail white petals to restore her brothers to human form, to restore her child, and so For 6 years she must not speak, cannot acquit her silence. Just as she will be put to death, swans appear. She throws the 6 shirts over them, and they assume human shapes, all revealed, evil exposed, the kingdom, the family saved. Such, the young daughter in the Lycea writes, is the only way to gain power, by keeping silent, to weave the impossible, a singular concentration. For purity, so already she believes, is the world's only strength, its diamond, its true worth, more precious than admixtures or iridescent silks. And God, my precious Simone, who is God? Not God object, the God that exists, but the God that must be. And is it to this God you pledge your faith? To the God I seek who never seeks me. How should one live? Like Alexander, who brought a cask of water, poured all onto sand to share his soldiers' thirst. So all takes place inside the soul, the free act. Is God freedom? Yes, and I am as alone with this God as I am without him.
Thank you, Dan. And we're now delighted to hear from Kim Chinquee, who is the author of 8 books. Her collections include Contact with the Wild and Octopus Arms, which are forthcoming from Mad Hat Press, and her novella I Thought of England is forthcoming from Baobab Press. Kim is senior editor of New World Writing Quarterly, associate editor of Midwest Review, chief editor of ELJ, Elm Leaves Journal, and she co-directs the writing major at SUNY Buffalo. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Totally.
Great. Happy birthday, Mark. Thanks for inviting me to the party. What a great way to celebrate. I'm going to start by reading a piece that Mark published in ELJ, Elm Leaves Journal, in our Clips edition. We published, I had the honor of publishing 3 of his pieces. And then I'm going to read 3 short prose poems of mine. So this, and by the way, I think Scotty and Francine, who are in this group tonight with us, they're also in this edition. So thank you all. Sorry if I'm going to mess up some of the words. I'm going to do my best because they're a little tricky. So you can correct me too. So Mark, a fossil squeaks again. Coloronga extremata, a fish mammal hybrid with 4 eyes, 2 aimed skyward, 2 ocean bound, 12 lateral fins, 2 of which allowed it crawl on land, was believed long extinct close to 500 years prior, reappeared somewhere around the time the corals began to spawn again. There were rumors and some hearsay concerning the matter that was employed to acquire an example of this long-lost species. The mariner in question was well known for his unorthodox angling methods. He claimed to have caught the fish while his spinnaker was pulled portside and caused him for a brief moment to spin in a circle, and his bait to appear to have the whirling motion of the seldom seen whooping marlin. Having wrestled this monstrosity aboard the vessel in a storm, the mariner realized that this might be something never seen before, and determined to contact the authorities upon arrival. As with most of the mariner's catches, Coloronga was laid on ice and made the trip back with him to the port. While in town, the mariner was distracted by all the manner of proclivities, especially, but also including copious amounts of hydromoxaborolide at a tavern known to be frequented by associates of organized crime. He was discovered in a state of stupor on the corner of Wells and Wallace Street in the morning after, and had no recollection of his former life. He remains a patient at the Allernerny Asylum to this very day. Colorongo E, as the creature is now commonly known, remains at large. For sightings or further information, please contact your local nautical Biotech Exchange. Thanks, Mark. It was an honor to publish that. I'm just going to read a few short pieces that are actually appearing in my prose poetry collection with Mad Hat Press, Contact with the Wild. The first piece is called The Gardener. This was published in the last issue of Conjunctions, Working Days, so it's about different jobs people have had. And this is called The Gardener. Now that the bumblebees are sounding in the yard, sprint to the garden store in your tank top with your poodle, as if there is a headwind. Stub a toe. Hear the tick of the clock as you place your items on the trolley. A new houseplant, 2 and 3, a philodendron, since you already have a few and they grow so nicely. Pay for mulch. Get some stones while you're at it. Some daisies for the back, black-eyed Susans too. Wheel the cart with your dog by your side, leashed, though she doesn't really need a leash. Sometimes you comply. People pet her. What a nice dog. What a fluff. She's even friendly to people who don't seem to like her. Her tongue hangs. She walks delicately with her head high, as if at a pageant. Stand in line, get out your credit card and pay. See the beam of the transaction like a scale. The old barter days of maybe wheat exchanged for thread are maybe added to a list of things to pay back later. Wheel your cart with your new items into the blistering sun. Unload your cart and place the items in your Honda. Open the door and say to your dog, "Sweet pea." Get in the car yourself. Drive to the corral and wait for the worker to look at your receipt so he or she can load your mulch. Let the workers load. Let them pet your dog and thank them. Driving, think of the things you have to do. Turn your thinking clock back to the winter, to the blizzard, where everything was buried, everything so cold, everything so white, so much death. You doubted days like these. Life expanding from the ground and shooting up, sprouting, blooming, blossoming, breathe. Later, put your hands into the earth and feel the dirt. Let it seep into your pores, lodge into the grooves and wrinkles of your fingers. Feel it under your feet, sunk into your least deserving nail beds. Bathe in it for as long as you can, as if it needs you. That's the same dog barking outside, by the way. But the next piece is called Libraries of Time. This was published in Big Other. This is also included in my prose poetry collection, forthcoming. I listen to the book, drive listening to the book, sit in waiting rooms reading the book, fall asleep reading the book. Unlike the protagonist in the book, I don't go to bed starving. Like the protagonist in the book, I don't have a sweetie pie. Don't hear a drum roll. The book is over 600 pages. Covers libraries of time. Parts of the book reenact parts of other books, parts of another book within the book, and has children wearing costumes, reenacting yet other parts of the book. I wait at the doctor's office with the book, then later, after a phlebotomist hurries to take my blood, telling me to make a fist, her finger palpating on my vein, I drive home listening to the book. My wheels turning, my mind living in the world of the book. Wheels in the book are described as stratospheres, donuts, things that whirl. I turn the pages like wheels, making things move, like the wheels on my bikes, the wheels of my mind, my memories, my words, wheels like vehicles through time, books like wheels and wheels like books, moving past worlds, universes, galaxies, centuries beyond me. And I have just one more tiny one. This is called The Pilot, and this is also published in Conjunctions. In the middle of a blizzard, my dreams welcome me to skies. I'm my own pilot on a motorcycle, flying over trees like ponderosa pines, cocoa booms, and then I become a Humvee with a checkbook, overseeing a factory full of plums. On the ground, I develop a niche for creating the most exotic fruitcakes. Thank you. Happy birthday, Mark.
Thank you so much, Kim, for joining us. I'm going to read one more piece, and then we need to hear from John Wessick. But here's that little piece. Daddy's nano cells. When they were completed, they struck me as exorbitant, excessive, overly ornate. His whole face had changed. It was as if each of his crevices had its own chandelier, a glass of champagne, gaudy gold fixtures, and puckered up lip butler. The 50-year-old laugh lines had been scrubbed clean by some machine that transmitted diaphanous radiation. The cleft in his nose was now lasered into a fresh petal on a pink rose, which was apparently reformed through the state-of-the-art dark matter, X5010, I believe. Donatello, they called him that last night in Venezia Seconda after dinner at Madonna dell'Orto. For as they said, he was now a sculpture in his own right, all his new teeth fixed firm and bioluminescent, the bald spot at the back of his head penciled in with a vast coniferous forest the color of amber. Each mole and wart was surgically excised, then excised, each follicle out of place plucked from its very pore, and then that stoic pore duly sealed shut. On some level, he had been improved upon. I mean, his surfaces were clear, swanky, and clean, but had none of those coarse bluster which had been his old trademark. Even his crystal snifter of Armagnac, he no longer cast that shadow in the kestrel and snakes at 5 p.m. on a Thursday happy hour. To me, he seemed, for all intents and purposes, a digitized version of himself. And she loved him for it, his second wife. Just back from their honeymoon, she baked him his favorite sponge cake from scratch, watered his rare roses, then sponged them again before bed. "Marvelous," she said, briefly surveying her own split ends. "Now, in his old age, he will never want for energy. The cells will give him what he needs to go on living." I finished the espresso she pressed upon me, quickly scanned the table's walls and floors, estimating the value of her recent acquisitions, then said, "Well, I hope the two of you are happy together." When Daddy waved from his wheelchair, you couldn't see his face for all the cells that were reconfiguring, recalibrating, downloading whatever facial recognition software might be needed this early in the morning to reassemble what was once well known. Unexpectedly, he beckoned me over. His face was nearly recognizable as I approached, but when I reached his limp, slippery feet and knelt in front of him, my right ear turned toward all his open atmospheres. He sat up, straightened himself, then said thinly, as if through a tin whistle, "I need an ocean to piss in." Actually, that's a true story. John Wessick is up next, who's a regional editor of the San Diego Poetry Annual. He's published hundreds of poems and stories in journals such as the Atlanta Review, Berkeley Fiction Review, I-70 Review, Love Stuff Chronicle, New Verse News, Patterson Literary Review, Pearl, Pyrene's Fountains, Slipstream, Space and Time, and Underside Stories. John's most recent books are The Shaman in the Library and The Prague Deception. John, give us some of your stuff.
Okay. Mr. President, I've just heard from NORAD. National Security Advisor Nick Tate said, "That asteroid has changed course. No natural object could supply that much Delta V, sir." That means President Becker removed his reading glasses. "It's intelligent, sir, and it's heading for Earth." Tate swallowed and loosened his tie. "The Deep Space Network picked up a signal. Women come and go talking about Michelangelo. It's from Proofrock, sir. I know it's from Proofrock, damn it. I was reading T.S. Eliot before your trousers were rolled. What are our options? NASA Administrator Golden says he can get the SLS ready to launch in 3 weeks. If we strip down the Orion capsule, it might have enough power to send one man, and one man only, to rendezvous with the aliens. Not Starliner, then. No, sir. Definitely not Starliner. This man will have to go to where there are more reaction control thrusters, carbon dioxide scrubbers, and physical switches than people. Then we need to send a poet, Becker said. But sir, how can we train a poet to be an astronaut in just 3 weeks? He'd have to learn orbital mechanics, propulsion, thermal control, life support and piloting, not to mention how to cope with zero-G. Wouldn't it be better to give a qualified astronaut a crash course in poetry? And get another Neil Armstrong? President Becker pounded his fist on the desk, knocking over his coffee cup. I won't have humanity's first encounter with alien intelligence reserved to one small step. You have no idea how long it takes to develop the skill of metaphor, imagery, and the music of the line. You can't teach that in a 3-week course at community college. Becker looked outside at the clouds over the rose garden. No, we need an Anglo-Swiss poet, fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. We need someone who's published over 40 books of poetry and has translated from German, Romanian, and French, someone who's lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He leveled his eyes at Tate. We need Marc Vincenz. Fire up Air Force One. We're heading to Greylock Mountain. Happy birthday, Mark.
Well, thanks. You know, Greylock Mountain is the headquarters of Harry Potter's American group, yeah? Did you know that?
I did not know that.
That's what they say.
Wow.
J.K. Rowling, thank you for that. I think I'm going to hand the mic over to Cassandra. We're going to...
We have a very, very short open because some people have had to leave. So
lots of people have just dropped away. It was, you know, we were up to 50 and now we're down to sort of 25.
it was a birthday marathon. They just didn't have the stamina, but the rest of us is here.
Sharon, Paul, Dominique, Robert, Lorette, Dominique again, Kevin, Lydia, Andrew, Daniel, and Kim, and John. Yeah, thank you all. Do we have someone to hear from still?
We have the best duo to end. We have Cindy and Bob. There's nothing better to end a lip balm, especially a birthday lip balm, with Cindy and Bob. So Cindy, it's after your big breakfast this morning. It's over to you.
I'm going to cheat a little. Last year for Mark's birthday, I wrote an alliterative poem with M. And this is sort of a new poem because I made it a prose poem and I revised it a little. So I changed the title. So pretend it's a new poem. It's called Dial M for Marc, a birthday poem for Marc Vincenz. My merry melody is meant for Marc, magical, mystical, maven, and multi-talented, multi-genre, mad hat manager, from Matilda's maternity to the utmost mountain of Melville in Massachusetts, where he makes all his money and where there are more mice than men. Many marvelous returns, Mr. Marc. Moi, moi, moi.
That was magnificent. A very Hitchcockian dial M for Marc. So I was convinced it was new. I think it was brilliant. I think we need multiple versions, Cindy. I think you need to write them for everyone. It'd be awesome.
Every year I'm going to change it.
I would love that. You can put a little chapbook together. How cool would that be?
You know what? I got to tell you, I'm working on an alliterative chapbook. I'm putting this in there, and I'm going to dedicate it to you, Mark. I really, why not? That's
a birthday present. That's a pretty nice one.
Be my M poem.
Thank you, Cindy. I really appreciate it.
Mentions Mad Hat, so
There you go.
By
Wow.
the way, I'm waiting for a book for you to send me because I ordered a month ago.
Only Cindy can dedicate a poem to you and then hit you up for the mail. No one else does it quite like Cindy.
I go through his catalog every week.
That's good. We want everyone to do that with Mad Hat. So we should follow your example. But we have to go to Bob. We have to go to the kitchen. It's not the same. We haven't had the kitchen for a while in our lives. It's getting a bit dark in there, Bob. I don't know. Turn the light on.
I need to get a new lamp.
Okay. I'm excited. What have you got for me? I have to go to open day at uni after this, so I'm expecting something that I can think about for the whole drive.
Actually, I'm going to read something by Mark.
Oh,
it seems
okay.
appropriate for the day. And this is from The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars, and it's the final section of a 5-section piece called Culture. Baking bread. Cooking something up after midnight. Stirring a potent brew. Omens. For whom the bell tolls, and so on and so forth. To grasp the mouse in all its shrieking fury, to shudder at the screech of a bat, to wait for the raccoon or bear to make its entrance. You are late, they say. The bear winds up his organ and invites you to dance.
And he did.
I love it. I love it when Bob reads your poems. They take on a whole new kind of inflection. I'm loving the voices of your poems. Thank you, Bob. And I expect a bear next time in there somewhere.
Yes, there are always bears.
There are many.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for such a wonderful evening. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Next show we actually have on September 7, Lila Delaboa, Jim Feast, Greg Masters, and Stephen Paul Miller. So please join us for that. So we're kind of ramping up a little bit for the fall season, a few more shows, and thank you so much for being here tonight and dedicating these hours to my birthday. I really appreciate it. I love you all, and well, lots of love and poetry, and I'll see you next time, yeah?
Many happy returns of the day.
Thanks. About to go off and have some champagne, yeah?